In this video, you'll learn how I saved my company thousands of dollars creating a macro, and hopefully you can learn something along the way. We will go through the problem and the solution, and this is a real-time business case from when I worked as an accountant at a big company. We had more than 200 different intercompany balances that needed to be reconciled to each other each month. We needed to see if the company A had a payable on company B, that the payable in company B was the same as the receivable in company A. And we had 200 to 300 different sheets each month that needed to be reconciled to each other. Each sheet had so many different rows, and this took about 8 hours each month just to copy and paste it into a new sheet and then try to reconcile them. I say try to because the human errors were massive. We saw that after we created the macro. The macro, if it's set up correctly, will never do a human error because it will do the same over and over again. Let's have a look of how the workbook looked like when we extracted it from the system. Here is a sample. We have 5 different companies in different sheets. In each of these sheets, you'll have the company name in the A1 cell, and you have the intercompany balances in the A2 to D and how many rows there are. And there are different numbers of rows, and we needed to reconcile these intercompany balances. Before you start to create a macro, what you always do is to think of all the different steps in order to complete the task. When I think of it, the first step is to loop through each sheet and add the value from cell A1, the cell up here with the company name, into the E column. And you don't know how many rows there are, so you need a variable that depends on how many rows there are with values in the, for example, A column. After that, the next step is to add a new sheet, place it first and name it reconciliation. Then you want to loop through, meaning that you go through all the different sheets and copy the range A3 to E and the last cell in the A column. In this case, A3 to E6. And then you want to paste it into the new sheet reconciliation underneath the previous data. This task came to me a couple of years ago before we had AI, and the different options to do it was either you write it yourself, and I did not know anything about macros, it was completely new for me, or we had Google. When you write VBA plus whatever you want to do, you will get a lot of different forums where you can just copy and paste the code from. Or you have the option in Excel to record the macro and just paste it. So those 3 were my options. It took me perhaps a day to finish it, but then I saved a day each month. But today we have OpenAI ChatGPT, and we could finish this task in just a matter of seconds. What we do is that we copy the instructions, head over to ChatGPT, and I'm currently using GPT-4. Then we paste our instructions, and a good prompt gave a good result. So before we start, we say, act as an expert in Microsoft Excel and VBA. Please provide a macro that, and then our instructions. And then it will provide you code that you could copy and paste into VBA. Let's see what happens when we copy the code, go to Excel, head over to the Developer tab, go to Visual Basic, add a new module where we insert our macros, or you could press on Insert up here, and then paste it, go back to our Excel sheet, go to the Developer tab, Macros, and run the reconciliation macro. And here is how it looks, and it looks actually exactly how we wanted it to look like. We have the date, we have the counterparty, receivables, payables, and the company that has it. ChatGPT finished the macro in just a couple of seconds, and this took me quite a while to do before. And if something's wrong, just have a conversation with ChatGPT. Say this line doesn't work, or I want to add this to it, or I want to remove this part, or whatever that is wrong, or how you want to modify it. Now we have everything in one sheet, and now we want to do the reconciliation. And there are different ways to accomplish this. I'd say that the best way is to use the sum ifs to get the receivable for the counterparty where you have a payable to that counterparty. And the formula would be sum ifs. You sum the receivable if the counterparty is equal to the company and that the company is equal to the counterparty. And here you get the receivable where you have a payable. And if we copy this down, you'll see that it seems to work. Let's subtract it with the payable, and you want 0 in order for it to be correct. Then we copy it, paste it here. We change the receivable to be payable and change this as well. And then copy it down, you'll see that you have 0. What we want to do now is that the macro does this all the time instead. What I would recommend is to use record macro because it's the easiest way to accomplish this task. Head over to the developer tab, press on record macro. Yeah, let's name it macro 1 and save it in this workbook. Press on OK. The first thing when you use the record macro is probably to select the sheet where you want to perform something. And then you press on F2, enter the formula, D2, enter the formula, select the cells, and then just fill it down. And then you could select the A1 cell, stop recording, head over to our macros. In module 2, you'll see it. First you select it, then you select the cell, enter the formula, select the next cell, enter the formula, select the range, and fill it down. Here you see the array F2 to G15, and here you could either use a variable or just change it to a very big number that you know is more rows than you have, and then you could probably just erase this one. Then we copy it to our other module, paste it here before this application cat copy mode falls. And then we go back to our Excel file. Let's remove this sheet, select all the sheets, select the E column and remove this part as well. You'll see that they are now blank. Let's go to the developer tab, macros, reconciliation, and run it. And here in just seconds, you will accomplish what before took more than 8 hours to complete each month. And this was just one of the tasks that I could automate using VBA. And nowadays it's so easy to create your own macro without any programming skills, and it will save you a lot of time. I hope you enjoyed this content. Please subscribe if you want to learn and go through more Excel problems with me.